Hi, everyone. In the last lecture, we went over the various videos affiliated with our lecture on China. Now I'm going to tell a story based on, on some level, trying to give a Chinese perspective of the outbreak. And so let's just review where we are. So we watched we watched the John Oliver video. And here in this article, just for a recap, which I assigned in the readings, I associated the geopolitical tensions that were pre-existing between the US, other nations, and China, and how COVID-19 would make those tensions worse. And which is unfortunate because with a pandemic, cooperation is of the utmost importance to deal with it, sharing the information about the virus, cooperating in terms of sharing information about who's infected, cooperation in terms of managing travel, so on and so forth. And I discussed this one of the kind of stereotypes that emerged as a result of, what we could call xenophobia. The stereotypes of, I'll just skip that image, and of the so-called dirty Chinese eating habits. And then in the same article, I try to debunk two myths. One, that it's spread by that woman eating the bat. And then the second, where did the idea that it was originally a biological weapon came from? Well, a not very reputable Washington newspaper, not the Washington Post. Don't get it mixed up with the Washington Times. Now, what are the problems that led to COVID-19 emerging? Look at this in terms of the various stereotypes of various nations. Germans are always known for having a solution to their problems. The US sends in a drone to take care of their problems. They get the solution. Russia sends its problems into jail, and China has no problems. Of course, it has plenty, but that's a joke. The Communist Party in China censors the media so that there is no information about problems in China. This infographic, funny infographic, was produced before COVID-19, but what does it reveal? That would become a problem when a new virus emerges, causing pneumonia-like symptoms, particularly in the Wuhan area. And the failure to alert the authorities to this new virus, because there's always this policy of China has no problems. And I just showed the rest for you if you're interested in looking. This is a Chinese English language newspaper produced by the Chinese government. It's a mouthpiece of the Communist Party. The virus is already an epidemic in China, but do you see the newspaper even addressing it? I'll zoom in on the image on the left, but on the right, it's just criticizing nations imposing travel bans on China. But the image on the left is kind of, well, Chinese propaganda, celebrating Chinese progress, using its kind of the cute national mascots, the panda, all the way to saying China is going to reach the moon or space. Okay. And I just took a picture of this article because what is the Chinese Communist Party emphasizing? It's modernization, it's isms. And if you look at the text, I didn't assign this article. I just wanted to highlight 3 sentences. You have to read between the lines. Okay? Every single sentence is basically in support of the Chinese Communist Party and its ability to deal with the virus and modernize the country. Now, in sentence number 2, I say there's something postmodern, and postmodernism is just basically arguing that in this day and age, there is no truth, there is no meaning in life, and why do I say in that sense sentence number 2 is postmodern? It talks about China becoming a modern socialist country, in other words, socialism. Of course, this is ruled by the Chinese Communist Party, which advocates socialism in China, but it's postmodern because at the end of the day, the Chinese Communist Party is running over a very capitalist China. Okay. So that the Communist Party and its call for socialism really has no meaning anymore in modern day China. Now, if we go for sentence number one, just replace what I underlined with urbanism, globalism, human consumption of animal proteins. I'm not sure what ism is that, rather than a form of capitalism. Okay. All lead to the spread of diseases. Okay. Urbanism means people living closer together in sentence number two are more likely to catch the disease. Okay. And then sentences number one and two, that is about modern mass transportation, whether it's the subway system underneath Wuhan or the high-speed rail service. Okay. All serve as a means of getting the virus to travel over a mass distance relatively quickly. And here's you could click the hyperlink to go to an article. If you have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal, I doubt you do. Technically, our libraries are supposed to have subscriptions, but they're very hard to access. But if you can, go ahead and look at that. But here, let me also then bring in a quote from another book. The epidemic in China coincided with Lunar New Year. And what does Deborah McKenzie say? It's one of the largest movement of people on Earth. It's mass travel, 400 million people moving to spend this holiday with the family. And if you just want to look at the mass transportation networks, there's Wuhan with 339 kilometers of subways. There's London, which we assume is one of the biggest. And there's New York, okay? But bigger than many European cities, okay? And like I said, that's just a means of, all those kilometers are basically a fast way for the virus to spread. And do you notice the color that's dominant? China is this light green, light blue color. Most are subways in China. And just like I said, that's all a way of just spreading the virus to the masses over mass distance. At the same time, globalization, I inserted globalism for you, refers to the ability of the virus to get on a 747 and travel all around the world. Okay. And that's the thing, viruses don't need passports. And then if we looked at the early phase of the virus, okay, you see the big, thick red lines? Those are the places in China that it hit. Okay. It was making, this is in the very beginning, February 2020. It was making inroads into all these European countries. But do you notice a massive line here, just its own category, the Diamond Princess cruise ship? And there it is. That was again, mass travel of the virus. And imagine quarantining in a place like this. It would get boring after a while. Remember, not all rooms had a balcony. Then we go back to the Wall Street Journal article again. So it talks about animal protein consumption, dense populations, and then finally, number 3, deforestation. Okay. All of this created the perfect storm that created COVID-19. And here you just see, in particular, kind of global meat consumption. And a lot of this is in China. And it corresponds with China's rising affluence. People have more money, they're spending more money on animal protein. Okay. This is a relatively sanitized version of what the wet markets in China look like. And we watched this video about why new diseases keep appearing in China. And this is the kind of rated PG-13 version of how these wet markets would look like. This is not just a problem in China, it's throughout Southeast Asia. Okay? In other words, it's not just a Chinese problem. It's a problem that has to be tackled multilaterally. And this just goes to show you some of the problems. Why do diseases spread in these wet markets? Even though we're not sure the disease emerged from Wuhan, it's again because animals are kept alive and slaughtered on the site to keep them fresh. And so, yeah, these frogs are getting cut and Yeah, when the animals lie, that's perfect for spreading viruses. Now, of course, frogs aren't mammals, but what really is worrying is the consumption of mammal meat and how they spread disease. But here we go. Here's the problem. Just again to show you what is sold at these wet markets. That's a giant salamander that was meant for human consumption. Now, of course, we have to always realize we might find this disgusting, but then some of us have never seen what it looks like inside a slaughterhouse where we get our meat, where we get our chicken or beef. Okay, it'll be just as stomach churning there. This isn't really just an issue of the wet markets in China or Southeast Asia. It's a global problem, and it's that of animal protein consumption. Remember, flu viruses emerge when pigs get into contact with wild ducks or chickens get into contact with wild ducks. That's how we get the influenza virus, which could be on a bad time, it could be just as deadly as COVID-19. So really, I mean, even though this lecture is on China and Wuhan, I have to add the caveat before we pass judgment on China, we have to realize this is really a global problem. And like I said, it's an animal rights problem because the minute any chicken gets infected from a wild duck, every chicken in the vicinity has to just be slaughtered. The same goes with pigs. Pig gets into contact with a wild duck, just off with there, have to be killed. A long time ago, we talked about Machiavelli. Okay, and here we see how President Xi of China seeks to be like the ultimate prince that Machiavelli recommended, to be both feared and loved by China's people. Now, look here. This is just a quote from a Chinese epidemiologist, but here we get to Foucault's biopower. How artificial intelligence becomes a mean that enhances the Chinese state's ability to biosurveil the Chinese masses. Sorry, just making it up. Okay. And again, what does the age of digitalism allow? It allows the Chinese state to easily censor the media. And remember, this was already a problem with censorship, that the original news of the virus wasn't made public. And if it had been made public earlier, it would have given authorities, quicker time to react. Okay. Do you see here what the Chinese state is telling to all news websites and social media platforms? Okay. And in China, this can happen, right? To remove hashtags, do not use push notifications. This is all censorship in the age of digitalism. Okay. Of course, what does the Chinese state have? Cyberspace administration bureaus to keep track and manage this entire process. Okay. Even the censoring of language to not cause a panic. Do not use pop-up notifications for negative news reports. And even uses language of cyber soldiers, okay, monitoring public opinion in apps such as WeChat. And then, so you see now how this information on the Wall Street Journal, this frontline, a front page article. Big data is all digitalism, you see. It's all data produced because in our digital era, we so much produce mass information with the apps we use, okay? That in the US or Europe, corporations scoop up that information for marketing purposes. In China, the state can scoop up that information. Well, also, no, I should say other Western and, the American government has done the same, thanks to the revelations of Edward Snowden. And so I like this picture because it juxtaposes the pre-modern architecture with modern surveillance methods. The CCTV camera. And again, you see a similar in this theme in this Reuters article. And just if you look at the couple of lines, look how digital surveillance just makes the monitoring of potential infected people that much more easier. Okay. And again, all this reference to big data, just replace the word big with mass. Okay. And there you go. Okay. Digitalism enhances the biopower of the Chinese state. It created a biosurveillance state in China. Okay. And the thing is, it's an attractive model. Again, look at the camera there. It's an attractive model for other governments who want to have a similar control over their citizenry. And biopower can be the best excuse for that. Keep in mind, this is what this new technology, new digital technology allows to monitor if anyone's overheating, has a fever, a good sign that they're infected. This isn't in China. This is in the airport in Serbia and in Europe, okay? So just to go to show that the Chinese state mastered this technology, but it is really global. And then we get to this article. What does all of this mean? You see, in the old days, the Soviet Union and its the KGB, okay, its version of its secret police. How do you monitor 240 million Soviet citizens with so few people in the KGB? Well, you couldn't. Okay. You had to just infiltrate secret agents and get lucky in capturing the political the dissidents, right? Or the political dissent. Now the algorithm can do the work of spies, you see. All of this technology, smartphone, face recognizing cameras, all of that, those mobile apps, that's all digitalism that allows, and of course the Chinese state doesn't have the privacy restrictions in the other countries. So it could literally enter your phone and demand that you input your health information on a daily basis. Now, in this case, in Israel, okay, you see the same technology. Now, Israel is considered a democracy, but the same technology is being used there. This is the biosurveillance state going global. Okay. And what is Harari kind of projecting into the future? Well, totalitarian states like North Korea use this new technology, not just to monitor your health, but if your temperature rises when you see the great leader, well, they use that now new technology to arrest you in this kind of Orwellian Big Brother biosurveillance system. Now, this could be in an exam image because what do we see here? How the virus will spread from China. You see, this is a major initiative China is creating to connect itself to the Eurasian and African landmass. And this is one of the reasons that tensions are high between China and the US, because basically such a infrastructure plan will give China a lot of influence at the expense of the US. These lines indicate Chinese initiatives to connect all these cities with railroad or shipping harbors. And I want you to pay attention to Tehran. That's where the coronavirus first hit in the Middle East, and Venice, north of Italy, that's where it first hit Europe. Okay. And the argument is, what did this map demonstrate? Did the virus travel along this route? Okay, now when I mean this route, we don't know who spread the virus to Tehran or to the north of Italy. We don't know exactly who patient zero is. But what we can, as a matter of conjecture, is the following. Did Chinese businessmen scouting out investments in the north of Italy and Tehran bring the virus with them? I should say businesswomen as well, because it was a businesswoman in Germany from China who spread it there. Or vice versa, did Italians and Iranians going to China for business deals to expand this One Belt, One Road initiative, go to China, get infected, and bring it back to the countries? We'll never know. But nevertheless, in the early phase of the pandemic, Rory, which is one of the longtime writers on pandemics, said that this was a Belt and Road pandemic. Okay. In other words, this is a pandemic that emerged because China is connected like never before. The same with this article. Traveling along the New Silk Road, COVID-19 was following the trajectory of the Black Death in the 1300s. And again, this is what leads to the geopolitical tensions between China and the US. The US was more or less able to secure its control over Europe after World War II, thanks to the Marshall Plan. Okay. Look how much bigger the Chinese initiative is, and this is what causes the geopolitical tensions, is US fears losing influence to China because of this massive project. I showed the videos. Videos. I showed all those videos. And we discussed all of this earlier. This is why I staggered the lectures like this. And then finally, you can see sometimes, look at this Wall Street Journal article. What is it saying? This is really an insensitive headline at a time when China is dealing with the pandemic before it's gone global, February 4th, 2020. And just so you know, how did China react to this? It expelled all the Wall Street Journal journalists from China just because of this article. And what I talked about earlier was the kind of discrimination that anyone of Asian descent faces. This is just in the US, and it is shocking because I come from Carmel, and I saw it there. Carmel Valley, I think some people just having a picnic were accosted. And then just the reference to the article I wrote on this, and I showed those videos already. Okay, so that's it. That ends our lecture on China. Next, we go to the US.